What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. I hope that you're doing well. Good grief. What a day, what a life, what a place. Yeah, it's a new week. Crazy weekend, delayed graduation shindig for my pre-K graduate who is now in kindergarten. Well, will be in kindergarten. Cut down some trees, which is probably the most masculine thing I've ever said. Set up a playhouse, which is even more masculine, or less. I'm not quite sure. Doesn't matter. Also, happy Pride Month, everybody. Yay. June is amazing, but so is the rest of the year. So, welcome to the show. Let's see. Let's say hello to some folks, shall we? Miss Indy Cindy, hello. How are you? Thank you for being here. Hello, Captain. Hello, Kimbers. Hello, Llama. That was a spit for you. Spit one out for my homies. I don't know what that means, but I don't know if I like what it implies. Miss Angie, hello. Miss Linda, hello. Mama Terry, hello. I agree. We do. For sure. People are knocking on my door already. Already they are knocking on my door. Give me 1 second to make sure that nobody is dying. 1 second. All right, nobody's dying. Nobody's dying. That's good. Gave some folks some time to come in. Why, hello, Miss Amy. Good to see you. I think I've got everything set up right, which is good. It's taken me some time, but I think I have it right. I think I have the audio set up so that it's going to be fine right off the bat, and I think that I've got all of the chats updated. So we're good, and I'm going to be playing around with Streamlabs to see if I can create some widgets to look prettier in terms of what you all look like on the screen, whether your chat call-ups or the actual chat on the right-hand side. So yeah, nobody's hurt, nobody's dying. It was the little one. So yeah, I hope everybody else's weekends were really good. I just want to, every now and again, my co-host Mike from Brew Crime, he sends me them every day, and they're hysterical. But he sent me two things today that really tickled my funny bone. One of them is, the next time your wife gets angry, drape a towel over her shoulders like a cape and say, "Now you're super angry." Maybe she'll laugh. Maybe you'll die. And then, courtesy of June being Pride Month, he sent me this meme that says, "My sexual orientation is the cast of The Mummy from 1999. And honestly, it's not wrong. It's not wrong at all. I am super happy to be here. Can you tell? So much so I forgot to hit the gavel. Oh, Night Court's in session. Night Court is in session. Oh, man. Welcome to the party, pal. Yeah, right? It's ridiculous. Except, I'm not really into the whole actual mummy thing. Not exactly my kink. But who am I to shame? No, I'm not. I'm not anybody to shame. All right, so I've just got a couple of things. Two things. I've got one that is which one? Who was a silly drunk one? Who was the silly drunk one? Far and Beyond. Oh yeah, John Hannah. He is funny. He's not classically good looking, but he's funny, and I dig that. So let's go ahead and go to that, shall we?
Just got an awesome face paint job. What do you think?
I like turtles.
Really, sometimes I don't watch the news.
Because we see this dude every day. I mean, every day.
I didn't make this kid pass out on my floor. People wanted to be here.
Oh, it's just like, dude, you get the best barrels ever, dude. Just
Customer out here, what's the best kind of firework to buy?
Wouldn't you like to know, weather boy?
Where are your parents?
All right, some stupid news for you. It's not really stupid. It's just ridiculous. Let me go ahead and full screen this. Sorry if you're buffering. I just went on YouTube. It seemed to be working for me. Do my best. So these folks posted stuff about what they thought, when they were 18. And they've gathered 28 of the funniest, and I think we should share them. Number 1, finally, I'm free and I can do what I want. Hate to break it to you, but no, you can't. You can't. You just can't. You can't. That's unfortunate. Number 2, it's a good idea to get a stomach tattoo. I don't think I thought that when I was 18. Does anybody want anybody want to admit the fact that they thought that was a good idea? That's my question. Because it's not. Hello, Bells. Hello. Yep. Number 5. Why don't parents just wipe their kids' noses? How hard can it be? Update. It's really hard. It's amazing. It's amazing the fact that it's just crazy how they become jello, and then it's just impossible to get a grab on them. Number 6. My mixtape was the business, and my auto reverse cassette player was Superfly. I apologize, everybody, for the buffering. I honestly don't know how to fix that. I am trying real hard. Number 7. You know what? I wonder if I went back out and just did the chatting and just told you about it, if it wouldn't buffer. Maybe there's just a lot going on that screen. We'll see. Tell me if it gets better. Number 7. Having this word processor will make doing term papers so easy in college. I can see a couple of lines before printing them. Yay! Oh, adorable. Number 8. Sunscreen is for old folks. Nope. Nopity nope. Honestly, at this point, I'm just blaming YouTube because it went well the first time around, so I don't know how to fix it. Number 9. Hotmail is awesome, and my AIM handle is so edgy. Okay, now I want to know what the AIM handle was. AIM, you're not the. I think just in general, we're supposed to be getting fiber soon. From another company that I've never really heard of, Glow Fiber, but they've gotten good reviews, and I think we'll probably make the switch because it just seems to be more reasonable, and I'm tired of dealing with Comcast. That's right, I said it. Number 10, that looked good in white lipstick. I looked good in white lipstick. Wasn't written by Marilyn Manson. Ooh, that joke immediately doesn't land. Number 11, that LSD was a vitamin. Yes. You take 1 hour. I never had Hotmail. Not once. But it took me a while to even get a Gmail. Like, I didn't have an email account until I was in college. And that was the college account. So... number 12. I could eat whatever I wanted and never gain weight. Oh, I miss the days. The days I miss. You sure as heck did get on the ground for it. Good grief. Yeah, that's not easy to do. Number 13, man, I wonder when financial stability is going to fall into my lap. Maybe when I'm 23? That's adorable. Number 14, hell yeah, I'm finally an adult. Time to live it up. Just, nope. 15, $1.23 a gallon for gas. Holy fuck, this is expensive. Number 16, that I'd have my student loans paid off by now. Before you knew everything was predatory, huh? Number 17, buying lottery tickets is cool. Number 18, that my rat tail was way cooler than the mullet I had before. Chris Okonich, no. No. Number 19, my 31-year-old math teacher was old as... Number 20, all men... I don't know if I could... you know what? F it. Number 20, all men were circumcised. What? I feel like I can say this, and I feel like I can say it's just us girls. Number 21, I'm the boss now. No, you're not. Number 22, Netflix and chill meant watching a movie until you fell asleep. I still do. Aw, Dustin Gordon. Sad. Number 23, wine is for soccer moms. What's funny is that her name is Jackie on Cloud Wine. Number 24, being an adult would be fun. No. Number 25, that I'd have a 6-figure salary by the time I'm 22. That's adorable. Number 26, that a pony was a baby horse. I'm not proud. Number 27, playing Snake with my friend's cell phone was the pinnacle of technology. Nokia. 28, and finally, that I should get the senior discount because I was a senior in high school. Nope. You sure shouldn't. If you have things that you thought of when you were 18 that were funny, you should hop into our Discord and start writing those down because I would love to share them with everybody. Maybe I'll make a cute little video. So, hashtag when I was 18. Yeah, and by the way, go to our Discord, the Courtyard. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. I was just in a meeting with mods today, and we were talking about all the stuff that we're planning for the next week. There's a bunch of things, especially we're celebrating Pride Month, and we're doing a bunch of cool stuff. So let me pull up the schedule, shall I? And you can get to know kind of what's going on in there. Let's see here. We have True Crime Tuesday. So tomorrow at 9 a.m. These are in Eastern time because that's what it shows up on my computer. True Crime Tuesday, we're going to be going through the entirety of Unlocked, Jail Experiment. That starts at 9 a.m. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., 49 Pulses, the Pulse nightclub documentary. Tomorrow and every Tuesday at 7 p.m., we do TARDIS Tuesday with Doctor Who. In fact, specifically tomorrow, we're doing Matt Smith's 11th Doctor run. Wednesdays, I think it's Mondays, Fridays, and Mondays right now. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, we're doing Bob's Burgers, so coffee and cartoons at 9:30. Fridays at 8, RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars. And they're doing some... Come on now. They're doing some cool stuff with that. Saturday at noon, Schitt's Creek Saturday. This Saturday at 8 is the Birdcage. Sunday, starting at 3, is Will and Grace. And so things are getting added every single day. Not only that, but we've got a really, really cool new way of doing case files and stuff, where it's not super busy. It's one thread with the different criminals or cases. And then you go there and you can click to go into the documents via a Google Drive easy to do, or you can just chat about the case there. It's kind of a one-stop shop. It's really nice. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here. But those are some of the events. But we've got events going on pretty much every day of the week. Some of the most dedicated moderators for Discord that I've seen. So they're keeping us busy, or they're also going to be rolling out some other new features too. It's just a really exciting time. So get in on the ground level with Courtyard, and go check out the events. Hit the I'm interested button. Yeah, that thing right there. And I'm there, and Terry True Crime's there, and Rudy is there, and all the mods here are there. So come say hi, for sure. All right. Here's the last news piece that I have for you. A Nebraska body transport, that is going to be great when it starts like that. Employee has been arrested and fired. It's getting better after an item at the crime scene was tampered with. Ooh, what could it be? According to reports, an employee that works for a company that transports dead bodies is in some big trouble after he allegedly tampered with a life-size sex doll found at the crime scene. I don't care about calling this guy out. 41-year-old Ryan Smith was one of the employees who came to collect a dead body after a natural death at a residence. Later that day, he went back to the property and claimed the county sent him back to collect a life-size sex doll that had been at the scene. He told the property manager that it needed to be swabbed for a, quote, biopsy. That's not... Okay, sir. The property manager denied him access. Smith said he'd come back with a warrant. What? Later, the manager heard strange noises coming from the property and went to investigate. There he found Smith. Inside, with the deadbolt locked and the chain secured, his clothing was very disheveled. Smith was arrested, fired from his job. He's now facing charges of burglary, criminal trespassing, and tampering with physical evidence. Well, I want to find out what ended up happening to him, but alas, I don't have the time or the time. So, so yeah, that's fun, isn't it? I think so. I promised you guys more trial today, so guess what? We're going to do some more trial today. So here we go. All right, we're hopping into day 6 of the Chandler Halderson trial. You know what's crazy is that this channel, this is the only time that they really have one day split into 2, and so they have day 6, and I was like, man, this is kind of in the middle of everything. What the heck's going on? Did we just miss the first 5 minutes or what? And then I realized it said part 2. But then you go to look for part 1. There is no part 1. They didn't identify it as part 1. They just identified it as day 6. So can we work on the naming conventions, please? That would be awesome. Oh, I did forget to tell you that if you are into the Brian Kohberger case, Llama and Angie and a couple other folks have Llama recently posted 200 trial documents. And so I'm working on moving those over to the drive. So if you're into that case, we're going to have all of that stuff available for you all to check out. I've imported 72 documents so far. So I'll be pushing and finishing that up tomorrow, hopefully. And those will be accessible to you. Yay! All right. So let's go ahead and get started with day 6, shall we? I am going to attempt to do the on the stand bit again, and we'll see how that goes as we make it through.
Hey, good morning. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Tell me if you can hear
Stephen Graber, S-T-E-V-E-N-G-R-E-I-B as in boy, E-R.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm retired.
What are you retired from?
Law enforcement.
In what capacity were you in law enforcement?
I was an investigator or detective for most of my years.
Sure.
I'll say that as a law enforcement officer.
Sure. In full transparency, at times you and I have worked together in our careers.
Yes.
Where at?
At the Dane County District Attorney's Office.
And how long were you at the district attorney's office?
12 years.
Fair to say, since you retired, unfortunately, we haven't kept in contact or anything, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Where do you live, sir, in relation to Bart and Krista Halderson?
I live directly across the street. If our houses are almost like a mirror image of each other, going out my driveway, across the street, or go into their driveway. So our garages face each other, and the front of our houses face each other.
In the early part to the mid part of July of last year, was there some significant police presence in your neighborhood?
Yes.
And was that for an ongoing period of time?
Yes.
At some point, did you talk to a police officer about something you perhaps noticed or remembered from July 1st of 2021?
Yes, I did.
Just first of all, if you could set the stage, what were you doing that day, July 1st?
Well, July 1st, initially, I had been up I have a garden that's away from my property. It's relatively large, a vegetable garden. So I'd been up there most of the day. And then later in the day, my granddaughter had a softball game. So I had attended that softball game, which was like around 6 o'clock in the evening.
Sure. What happened when you arrived home?
So when I came home, which probably been an hour later, about 7 o'clock-ish, somewhere in there, but I had previously harvested some radishes out of my garden and had them in a 5-gallon pail, so I had taken them out into my front driveway and had cleaned them up, just cutting off the excess leaves and stuff like that. But I had sat in a park bench that I have sitting in my driveway that's sitting between the 2 garage doors, because I have a 3-bay garage door, or garage.
About what time in the day were you out in your lawn or the driveway there cleaning the radishes?
It was probably about 7 o'clock-ish, somewhere around that time.
Okay. And what did you notice around that time that caught your attention?
Well, what caught my attention was while I was there doing that for a period of time, all of a sudden I could detect a strong odor just of burning wood. And so I thought someone maybe had a fireplace, or I should say a fire pit or something outside going. They're just burning some firewood. But about 5 minutes or so later, all of a sudden that odor of burning wood became a distinct odor that was more like in the line of what I thought someone was like barbecuing a large pork, like in one of these large barbecue pits or whatever that can hold the whole pork.
Okay. And how long did that smell persist in your neighborhood?
Well, for the remainder of the time I was outside, it was present, kind of became real strong and kind of like a pungent smell, to the point that I actually walked down my driveway half the distance and kind of looked up and down the street to see if anybody was doing anything like grilling or something else was going on, and I didn't see anything at that point.
Okay. If you had to guess, or if you had to estimate distance-wise from the location you are to the Halderson home, about how far away is it?
About maybe 100 to 130 feet.
Okay. And you had that observation that day. You're not here to say exactly what that smell was, right?
No, other than it smelled to me like, it was something burning of a meat or fats or something.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you.
May this witness be released and excused.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good remainder of your day.
The state calls Colin Lynch to the stand. You're going to follow that deputy there.
Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you want to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
One day I just want somebody to be like, I don't at all. Well, that was unnecessary.
Good morning. If you believe you can do so safely and responsibly, testifying without a mask would be our preference. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Colin Lynch, COLINLYNCH.
And Mr. Lynch, whereabouts do you live?
7022 Bridgman Road.
And what municipality?
Windsor?
Okay. Did you know someone named Bart Halderson?
Yes.
How did you know Bart Halderson?
Neighbor, and we're both commissioners on Lake District.
Sure. I'm going to have you pull that microphone just a little bit closer to you. I'm sorry. Sometimes it's hard to hear in this room. You say you're both commissioners on a Lake District?
Yes, it's a special tax district that acquires funds for the management of the pond that we live on.
Sure. You both back up to the pond?
Yeah, correct.
In relation to Mr. Halderson's house, were you aware of where Bart Halderson lived?
Yes.
Where was your house in relation to his house?
Directly behind him across the pond.
Okay. So if you looked across the pond, you'd see Bart Halderson's house?
You're correct.
Okay. Sir, back in July of 2021, did you have any security cameras at your house?
July 2021, yes.
Okay. What type of security system, or how many cameras did you have at your home?
Total of 13.
Did some of them face the front of your house?
Yes.
And did at least one of them face the rear of your house?
Rearward, yeah.
Okay. And does that camera look toward the pond in some respects?
Yes, as the pond is in the images above the ground.
Sure. So, what was the purpose of that camera when you installed it? Was it to look at the pond, or was it to look at something else?
I had planned when I installed the cameras. I had planned on putting in a pool, and there's terribly risky, terrifying things, and so. One of the many reasons for installing cameras of the pool in the rear was the primary purpose of that.
Okay. In the mid part of July of last year, were the police having contact with you about your security cameras and perhaps them having some footage that they thought was helpful?
Yes.
And did you provide full access to your security system at that time?
Yes.
In fact, at one point they actually took your kind of the DVR from your home, did they not?
That's correct.
Okay. And did you later learn that they were particularly interested in maybe the rear camera of your house facing across the pond toward the Halderson house?
Roughly, yes.
And you fully comply with any testing they wanted to do during that time period?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm sure it's been marked in this case as exhibit number 306. Let me just ask you, do you know what that is?
Yes, it's my camera 6, my property.
Okay. And is that kind of a screenshot?
That would be accurate. Yes.
I'll move 306 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
So the day I think you testified, the deputies took your DVR system and they pulled footage off of it. But you're saying that 306 is at least a screenshot of what that rear camera maybe would have been looking at around that time.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll just move to publish quickly 306.
Mood lighting.
And you said you were planning to build a pool. Looks like you followed through with that, right?
Amazingly, yes.
Okay.
When people talk about building a pool, all I can think of is
had no further
National Lampoon's
part
Christmas
in
Vacation.
Analyzing the video or doing anything like that. That was the sheriff's deputies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And did they return your DVR to you eventually?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you.
May this witness be excused
No,
and released?
thank you.
May. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good remainder of your day. Thank you.
It sounds like the next witness is just on a different floor, so he's on his way up.
All right,
But
thank you.
I'll sit here, I suppose, silently for a minute.
Very good. Although I can, but I'm in that regard.
The state.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. If you are able to safely and responsibly testify without a mask and are comfortable doing so, please do.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good morning, sir. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Scott Kuntz, spelled K-U-N-T-Z.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a sheriff's deputy with the Dane County Sheriff's Office in Madison.
Any particular area?
Yeah, I work in our support services division. And in the support services division, I have a number of duties assigned to me. I conduct covert surveillance when we are looking for criminal suspects and their activities. I collect video evidence, audio evidence, image evidence. I participate in search warrants, not only of physical locations, but of devices looking for information. And I perform forensic image, audio, and video analysis.
Highlighting specifically forensic image and audio analysis, what specific training do you have in that field of study?
So in forensic video analysis, specifically, I've got over 1,400 hours of education and continuing education over the course of my career. I am a LEVA, that's L-E-V-A, Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association International Certified Forensic Video Analyst, and that's a certification that is an earned certification through proficiency testing and education, and an examination by a board of examiners of the work that I've conducted. I'm also certified by the International Association for Identification as a forensic video examiner. That is an earned certification that is achieved through successful completion of a technology examination. If you pass that, then you qualify for a practical examination where you're given media to examine and solve problems with that media. I have received certification through NATIA, N-A-T-I-A, that's the National Technical Investigators Association, as a technical investigator. And that is a certification that is earned through examination for your understanding of engineering and electronics as it relates to surveillance.
Are you at any point called upon to teach in these areas of expertise?
Yes, I am.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So LEVA is the organization through which I've earned most of my training. And over the time, they have invited me to be a contract instructor for them. So to date, I have over 2,000 hours of instruction around the world for them. I've been fortunate enough to teach across the United States to law enforcement, to crime lab personnel, private investigators, attorneys, throughout Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore, Sweden, Oman, the UK. There's been a lot of teaching opportunities for that. I've also been given the opportunity to guest lecture at UW-Platteville, at Gateway Technical College in Kenosha, Blackhawk Technical College in Janesville, the National Forensic Academy at the University of Tennessee, and Marshall University in West Virginia. I have taught forensic video analysis and ethics courses at Madison College. I think it was about 7 years. And I've taught a video evidence course at Fox Valley Technical College in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Aside from, and putting this case aside and what you did in this investigation, what types of video problems that do law enforcement have where maybe your expertise is called upon to help them solve? And I guess the better question is, what types of things would you get involved in to help maybe detectives or beat cops solve something they have with a video problem?
So the discipline that I'm trained in and that I perform is forensic video analysis. And that's defined as the scientific examination, comparison, and or evaluation of video and legal matters. The idea is that there should be a systematic and methodical approach to the analysis of data, and the data in this case would be a video, an image, or an audio file. Many times, all we can do as investigators is to just look cognitively at something and try to perceive what we can and make an assessment. The idea with forensic video analysis is that we want to try to get to beyond just a recognition level of understanding, but actually to an identification where we can prove what the data shows through experiments. So forensic video analysis is one of the main duties that I have at the Sheriff's Department. Sometimes it's speed analysis. If there's a traffic fatality and we have video or audio or both of that or imagery, try to reconstruct speed or try to reconstruct locations. Sometimes I am tasked with recording statements of people accused of harming babies. So oftentimes a baby will be injured or killed, and then there's no real witnesses to it. And sometimes I will record the statement through a crime scene of somebody recounting the events prior to the baby being in distress. I video record homicide scenes. So in this case, I recorded the homicide scene. I conduct surveillance. I will sometimes do height analysis. So for bank robberies, serious cases, sometimes the question being asked is, how tall is this person? Can we possibly eliminate them as a suspect based on their perceived height? We can perceive height, but we also want to try to prove height, and that can be done in many instances with video. Reconstruction and recreation of events. I've done that a number of times in my career where we will try to recreate events. Today I'll talk a bit about some recreation through a process called reverse projection, where recently I worked a case where the question was, where was this camera when it took this video? And so it was an hours-long process of trying to locate in three-dimensional space where that camera was when it took the images that were involved in that investigation.
And you're wearing a badge, so I'll ask you, are you, in addition to all of that, are you also a sworn law enforcement officer?
Yes, I've been a sheriff's deputy for 28 years.
Okay. Showing you what's been marked in this case is exhibit number 307. Can you tell us what that is?
This is my curriculum vitae.
And approximately how many pages
Good
is this?
grief.
Oh, I don't know, 25 pages.
20.
And is that a summary of your training experience and perhaps some of your education as well?
It is.
All right, I'll move 307 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
I feel like that needs to be celebrated.
In this specific case, at some point were you asked to become involved regarding a video of a homeowner named Colin Lynch who lived on Bridgman Road, perhaps behind the Halderson residence, who had a video facing the rear of his property?
I was.
And did you talk to Mr. Lynch?
I did several times.
And initially, were you able to obtain that video from him?
I was.
How so?
Initially, a copy of the video was provided to me by Dane County Deputy Sheriff Michael Wilk. And as I was looking at the video, trying to assess what we had, what we didn't have, what the limitations were with the evidence that we had received, one of the questions that I often ask, especially in very serious cases such as this one, is do we have the purest form, the best evidence possible from that recorder, that DVR, called a digital video recorder. And so initially I worked with the copy that had been given to me, and then eventually I was able to get the video in a couple different formats from that DVR, and I could make an assessment in the laboratory if I had the purest form of what was there.
Sure. And
somebody call Walter White.
Your report, and I know there's a PowerPoint, and we're going to see some video here in a second. But before we do that, I want to ask you, at the time you were performing this work, were you involved in other aspects of the investigation into the deaths of Bart and Crystal Halderson?
Yes, I was.
And just to summarize for the jury so they know maybe what was in your mind while performing some of this work, what you knew around the time that you started performing this work about the investigation.
When the events unfolded at the Halderson residence, I was out of town on personal business. And I believe it was on July 9th, I was contacted by my supervisor. He was then a lieutenant. His name was Matthew Carls, K-A-R-L-S. And he informed me that the Haldersons had disappeared initially and that it was turning into a homicide investigation. And I had also noticed that while I was out of town, just checking news headlines online. So I knew when I came back to work that we were going to be in what we call major case mode, where all resources are devoted to the investigation of
we don't time zone here.
So I knew that body parts had been found prior to my involvement with the case. And if I remember correctly, an arrest had been made just prior to me getting involved in the case as well. I was shown a couple of photographs of the inside of the Halderson residence. I was informed that it appeared to have been a fire in and around the fireplace in the lower level of the family room at the house. And I was informed that no bodies were found. Typically on homicides, we find bodies right there, and in this case, that wasn't the situation.
And you produced a report in this case, did you not?
I did.
It's a somewhat extensive report, but I'll provide it to you. I've marked in this case exhibit number 313. Would you absolutely take a drink of water and then take a look at that and let me know, is that your report that you've produced in this case?
Yes, this is my report.
Approximately how many pages is that?
When printed, this report is 36 pages.
And does that summarize your findings into this investigation?
Yes, it does.
All right. I'll move 313 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
And I'll show you 308. What does that appear to be?
This is a thumb drive, and it's labeled Coombs Light Analysis PowerPoint.
And if you produced a PowerPoint in this case to display to the jury, perhaps what's in your report in a more easy to understand fashion.
Yes, I did.
All right. I'll move 308 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
I'll move to publish.
You may.
So as we're queuing this up, I have a couple questions for you. What was the question you were trying to answer in this report? What was the question at hand?
When I initially got briefed on this case upon my return to Madison, I made contact with Deputy Sheriff Mike Wilk. He had been assigned to look at the video from 7022 Bridgman Road, Mr. Lynch's DVR video, and to catalog the series of events chronologically that he observed in the video. I've trained Mike Wilk in the past at Madison College, so I'm familiar with him and his work. And I said, Mike, let's meet. I just want you to show me what you see, what you don't see, and what your observations are. And he indicated to me that on the video there was a flickering light that he believed was coming from the Halderson residence on the early morning hours of July 2nd, 2021. And I said, what do you believe that light to be? He said, I think it's a fire in that family room at the house. And I asked him why he believed that, and he said things that made sense to me. It's a flickering light. He had knowledge. He told me that there was a fireplace in that room, and I had not yet at that point been in the house. And I said, well, how do you know it's coming from that window? He said, well, I've looked at daytime video, and I think that's where it is. So I looked at that video, and not being familiar at that point with the residents, I thought, he's probably right, but really it's a perception thing. We perceived it probably was that window. So the question I posed to him and to Detectives Shunk and Sims is, I think we have an opportunity here with this video to not only perceive what we think was the source of that light, but to prove it. And so the question really was, where was that light coming from? Not what the source of the light was, but where in the Halderson residence was that coming from?
And so you talked a little bit about forensic video analysis, and you have a slide here. It says the scientific examination, comparison, and or evaluation of video in legal matters. That's perhaps a technical definition, but what's a layman's definition of what this is, what we're about to do?
Sure. So on slide 2 here, I've got the textbook definition of forensic video analysis, but the idea is that regardless of whether it's a liquor theft or a homicide, as an analyst, I should be clinically looking at the data, trying to understand what it can prove, what it cannot prove, what its limitations are, and how firm of a foundation do we have on the data that we're relying upon. If you don't have a forensic video analyst involved between the viewing of the video and the interpretation of the video, the interpretation could be skewed. I use the example sometimes of looking at WebMD. I may not feel well, and I could look at WebMD, and I could diagnose myself with all sorts of things. I might be right, I might be wrong, but I'm not qualified to say. The idea with forensic video analysis is that anybody can look at video, and sometimes we're right in what we perceive from those recordings, but a forensic video analyst is trained to set aside feelings and things that might be contextually bias-based and objectively look at the data and see what it might prove.
Sure. Why do we need you? Why can't I just go on my computer and just zoom in with my fingers and just make an educated guess? What do you add to the mix?
So what a forensic video analyst does is tries to make sure that if science can be applied appropriately, and if it is the right thing to do in terms of can we answer a question. If there's a testable question, something we can quantify, height, speed, identification, in this case identification, We should try to do that in a valid, repeatable, reproducible manner. So the idea there is that, can I do experiments over and over again and get the same or similar result? Also, can I hand off the data and my report to a like-trained analyst, and could they, without any knowledge of the case, work the data and get the same or similar result if their training and experience and tools are comparable?
Is it your belief and your testimony that your work in this case and in other cases where you perform forensic video and analysis can be replicated by other similarly trained people?
Absolutely.
And they, for all intents and purposes, should, if the work is done correctly or in the same way, would probably find exactly the same result.
They will get the same result.
The north side of the Halderson residence was in fact the area that you were concerned with, correct?
That is correct.
Here's a photograph. This photograph appears to be taken on July 22nd, 2021. Just a couple of questions. In this photograph, are we looking at essentially the backyard looking at the Halderson house?
That's correct. I took this photograph in the backyard at the Halderson residence.
And at your back, when you took this photograph, was that the pond?
Yes.
Okay. The windows are blacked out. Could you just, did law enforcement place that there, or was that like that when you arrived at the scene?
I was at the scene a number of times, in the house, around the house, on a number of different occasions. And on July 22nd, when I was there, I spoke with Deputy Sheriff Greg Leatherberry. We worked hand in hand on crime scenes for many years, and he said, by the way, he said the lower level windows in this tri-level house have a black canvas or covering over the windows. And he just wanted to make sure I was aware of that. He asked me if I needed to take those down for any reason. I said no. You know, if we want privacy, we have to create it. And so in homicide investigations in particular, we try to cover up out of sensitivity to the victims and in trying to keep the investigation pure and keep prying eyes from looking into areas that they need not look. The windows, the two windows on the lower level in the center were covered, as well as the window on the right, which was the north garage window.
Okay, law enforcement placed that.
Law enforcement placed that on there.
Here you add some labels. What are we looking at there?
Yes, so to try to do the analysis of where the light source was coming from on the early morning hours of July 2nd, I just put annotations on this image to help familiarize people with what these windows represented. So the window on the far left is what I labeled dining room window number 1. It is in the dining room. The next one to the right is kitchen window number 2. That's the window above the kitchen sink. Kitchen door number 3 had a window in it. It was a walk-through door that went from near the pantry in the kitchen out onto a deck area. Fireplace window number 4, again, my terminology, was the window closest to the fireplace in the lower level of the home. Number 5, family room door. That was a walk-through door in that same family room. To the right, TV window number 6. That was a window closest to a television, a flat-screen TV that was mounted on the wall, the west wall of that family room. And then finally, garage north window number 7. That was a small window that was on the north side of the garage.
And we're going to continue to use these labels as we go through your presentation, correct?
That's correct.
What is this?
So slide number 6 that you're looking at is from Google Maps. I've got the hyperlink there on the image. Part of my job involves certified drone operations, and typically in a case such as this, I would fly a drone and we would take pictures from the air to try to demonstrate from a bird's eye view what we have there. This location is not far from the Dane County Regional Airport, so there are some restrictions in flying a drone, as well as we have a limit on how high we can fly drones. So in this case, it was more advantageous to use Google Maps. The reason I put this image in this presentation is to try to orient people to where the camera was at Colin Lynch's house at 7022 Bridgman Road versus the Halderson residence. So on the lower right, I've indicated camera location at 7022 Bridgman Road. The camera was located on the underside of a decking structure, the deck for the upper level deck. The camera at the left-hand corner of this image, I've labeled Halderson residence. You can see the roof there in that image. And then with yellow annotations, I have indicated the approximate field of view of that camera.
What are we looking at here?
So slide number 8, I put some sample images for better understanding of what the field of view was from the CCTV or closed circuit television system there. The image on the left is from the daytime on July 2nd. It has no particular significance other than that is just the field of view. You can see the pool area of Mr. Lynch's residence. Further into the scene behind the pool is his backyard. It's grass. Beyond that is the pond. And then way off in the distance, where I have a red line kind of pointing toward the top of that image, is where the Halderson residence is located. That same view at nighttime, indicated on the right side of the screen, is from the early morning hours of July 2nd, 2021, and it's the same scene, just at night.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of times, we're talking about a several-hour period, very early, when we say early morning hours, just the first leading into the second, but those early morning hours of July 2nd, for a several-hour period, there was a flickering light that you were concerned with, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what is this right here?
Excuse me. In slide number 9, a flickering light was recorded on CCTV for several hours at the Halderson residence. This image is enlarged to try to show where on that image you could see, if you watched, where that light was coming from. So I've got a red line here pointing to where that flickering light was located on the Halderson property.
Slide 10, what are we looking at there?
So slide number 10, this is a small video sample of that flickering light, enlarged 2 times. And I think it's like a 10-second video. If you hover, you can play it, and it's just a short little clip. If you look carefully where that red line is pointing when the video plays, there is a flickering light in that location.
And we'll look at a good deal of video here in a moment. The unknown is, right, and I think we already talked about this, the question you're trying to answer, the unknown is which window was associated with that flickering light for that several-hour period in those early morning hours of the second.
That's correct.
Okay. You had to answer some questions to solve this question, I would imagine. First being, how was the video file constructed that you had?
Yes. You know, much like when you go to the doctor, they make a visual assessment of you. They listen to you and your symptoms and your explanation of what your issues are. They may do some medical tests, take your pulse, check your respirations, different things, trying to figure out, you know, what is the cause or what is going on. The same thing is true in forensic video analysis. It is not proper to just start diving in and looking at video, but rather interrogating or trying to examine the characteristics of the file or files that you received, because it's that training experience of how those files are constructed which inform your decisions about what we can say about the video and what we can't say. It shows us our limitations, and it's important to know our limitations going in.
And that brings us to our next slide. What are we looking at there?
Right, so if we start from the top to the bottom just briefly, kind of big to small, I received a bunch of video files, quite a few of them. Those video files were made up of what are called GOPs, G-O-P-S. Those are groups of pictures. So they're families of images that are grouped together mathematically that construct a video. So when we look at a video, it just looks like a video. You hit play and it just runs. But in many of the videos, in fact, most of the videos we look at, there's actually groupings of frames that go together. So those groups of pictures are made up of frames. So if you were to pause a video and just look at a picture, that is a frame of video. There's a frame rate associated with videos. How many refresh pictures do we get every second? Those frames are broken down into smaller segments called pixels. Those pixels are generally little squares of information, and those pixels are finally made up of color channels, reds, greens, and blues. So video is what's called an additive process, where we take primary colors of red, green, and blue. They're mixed together to make all the colors that we see in video, secondary colors. The color channels are what we're at issue here, because those color channels allow us to perceive brightness and color in an image. So that's what is of most importance to me in my analysis in this case, was in the pixels, what were the RGB or red, green, blue values of the pixels defining where that flickering light was located.
And slide 14, is this an example of pixels, essentially?
That's correct. So on slide 14, I put annotations that show an exaggerated view of what we see, where the image on the left is a sample image from the closed-circuit video system at 7022 Bridgman Road. I put an annotation on the left side of 240 and on the bottom 352. That's the pixel count. Vertically, this image is made up of 240 pixels tall, and horizontally 352 pixels wide. On the right side of the screen, I have shown a small portion and log the idea that we don't normally see pixels.
Major picture, or that larger picture, what is that?
Second floor patio at the Lynch residence, and obviously that was right in front of the camera. We see that illuminated here because the camera itself has what's called near infrared capability. It's got illuminators or LEDs around the lens so that at night you can see in what's an otherwise dark environment. You wouldn't see much with your eyes, but the camera can see differently than your eyes can see. And so we see that reflected here, not only off the ground in the foreground, but also off of that beam.
Okay. So when we talk about pixels, the pixels, you pull out an example there. That example has no significance other than you just pulled that one out, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you identify, or is there a process for identifying where those pixels are on a video that you're looking at?
Yes, there are. So,
and I'll move to the next slide, 15.
Yeah, so slide 15, I put a couple examples in here just to try to illustrate. I like to think of it this way. When we used to hold paper maps and you're trying to find a street or you're trying to find a city, you'd look in the alphabetical listing, where is East Washington Avenue? You find it and it would say L6. You follow down a grid of letters, follow over a grid of numbers, kind of an XY coordinate thing, and then you'd find where you're looking. The same way here. So the way video is structured, the pixels always start with the location of 0. So in the upper left-hand corner in this example, that pixel in the upper left-hand corner would be X position 0, Y position 0, 0, 0. That is its location in two-dimensional space.
Got it. And so if we look at the next slide, perhaps the different corner.
But do you have
so
it?
The second example here I made in slide 16 is the opposite. The lower right-hand corner, it's at its maximum X value. It's all the way to the right. It's at its maximum Y value all the way at the bottom. So we would have an X, Y coordinate of 351, 239. And again, those numbers are one less than the total width and height of that image because we start counting at 0 instead of 1.
So these pixels essentially can be placed on a graph.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the question becomes then, the flickering window, what are the XY coordinates of that, correct?
That's what was of concern, yes. Where were they located?
And so when we talk about your overall question, which is which windows flickering, this is maybe the first big question that has to be answered.
Yes.
Okay. But there were some challenges in answering that question.
Yes, there were.
All right. Let's talk about those challenges. And you can start from the top and we'll go down.
Yes, so digital multimedia evidence, video, audio, still images, a term called metadata, the data that's embedded into these files, are what's of importance. And when we study digital multimedia evidence, it's often very different than the type of video you might see from a television station. I had the good fortune of working for 2 television stations prior to working here, and the goal was to make the pictures as pretty as possible. In forensic video analysis, we're often dealing with data that isn't very good. It has a lot of challenges, and in this case, the biggest challenge as I saw it was the distance from the lens. So the target, the thing we're trying to observe, wasn't up close. It wasn't like I put a camera in front of somebody or took a selfie and you fill the frame with the information. In this investigation, the distance from the lens at Colin Lynch's house across the pond to the Halderson residence was 367 feet. That is quite a distance. When you couple that with a wide-angle lens, most closed-circuit television cameras have a wide-angle lens, so they can cover a wide area. You may want to cover your whole front yard or a whole area in an entryway to your business or something. The wide-angle lens makes objects appear smaller than they really are. So when you have a wide-angle lens coupled with a long distance, objects appear quite small. And if they're small, there's less detail. Video resolution. The idea with video resolution is if, television pictures are rectangular. So if you think back to school, how do you get the area of a rectangle? It's width times height. That's how we calculate what's called spatial resolution of video, where we would
don't use spatial resolution math me, sir.
By the height, and that gives us our count. So if you have a camera that's rated as a 12 megapixel camera, it's really just the product of the width times the height. That's how you kind of get there. In this case, this video resolution is 352 by 240. To give you perspective, HD, or high definition, 1920 by 1080. So the total resolution for every frame of video here is about 4% of the area of HD. So we're not dealing with a very large data set. We have very limited data available to us. And again, the targets were small, the house windows. That's what was of interest in this investigation. The lighting conditions were a challenge here. The video in question was at night, so it's dark out. The near-infrared lighting from the camera presents two different contrast ranges. So in the foreground, we have a lot of contrast. We have brights, we have darks, we have midtones. In the distance, we don't have all that contrast. It's very dark across the backyard and out onto the pond and out onto the Halderson's property. And finally, one of the biggest ones is what's called lossy, L-O-S-S-Y, video data compression. Every digital video recorder that records cameras has to apply what's called lossy data compression. The idea is that when the video files are manufactured in that recorder, if they are not reduced in logical file size or how much space they take on the hard drive, the average consumer of that video would only be able to keep video for a very short time. Could be hours, might be a day. So lossy video compression allows the DVR to be able to store days, weeks, or months of video, and it's a destructive process. So what happens with lossy data compression is we start to lose what's called high-frequency details, things that show scars, marks, tattoos, small details. Our eyes aren't as sensitive to that, so the idea with the engineering is that let's just discard that information. We can still communicate the idea, and people kind of won't notice or care. The other thing that can be affected and is affected with lossy data compression is color purity. How pure are the colors? So if I've got a black shirt on, would it appear black in the video, or would it be some impure color that kind of approximates black? In this case, color was not an issue because the camera was in that nighttime mode, and so the frequencies of near-infrared are beyond and infrared are beyond our ability to really see with our eyes, so the camera appears to be black and white when in fact it's a color camera. So these all kind of were in my mind as challenges that would make it more difficult to try to come to an answer of where that window is located versus just looking at the video and knowing readily right away.
Despite these challenges, was it your impression that you could still march on and try to answer that overall question of which window was flickering?
It was.
And you used a process called reverse projection, correct?
Yes.
Reverse projection, the scientific process of determining the position, size, or height of an object captured in a video image, achieved by superimposing and aligning the original image over a control image with the same or identical camera in the same position. So tell us about that real quick, other than just what's on the screen. What is this?
So reverse projection has been around in the forensic community, I think, since the 70s. It was originally used by traffic investigators. If a photograph was taken at a traffic crash scene, the idea was you could go back to that location, figure out where that photo was taken. Once they're what's called registered or aligned, the historic image with a new image you might take would allow you to make measurements and to place markers and to place things. So reverse projection is used as a very powerful tool in our forensic processes here at the Sheriff's Office for, again, achieving an understanding of height of a person, location of debris at a traffic crash, location of vehicles at a traffic crash, and in this case, trying to locate where the windows were located in the darkness off in the distance. So we have historic images from July 2nd. The goal then would be to take new images, superimpose them, make sure they're aligned in the X direction, left and right, the Y direction, up and down, the Z direction, in and out, depth, and then the rotationally. And we were in a good position in this case because the target hadn't moved. The Halderson residence is still in the same spot, hasn't moved. The Lynch residence hasn't moved. The camera had not moved from what we could tell. So we didn't have the amount of work we would where we say, where on earth was this picture taken? We already knew some of those variables were already controlled. And so it was just a matter of going through the work of trying to figure out, where those windows are located.
Right. So you had your images from July 2nd, and then on July 30th, you go out with a couple guys to the Lynch residence and to the Halderson residence, and you perform kind of this experiment of sorts.
Yes.
Okay. You involve Mr. Wilk, Deputy Wilk, and tell me how this process worked.
Yeah, so one of the things that I always want to do before we embark on any kind of reconstructive work at a crime scene is to try to determine, do we have variables that have changed that are going to affect the experiment? So the most obvious one to me is, do we have the same camera? the same lens, the same connectors, the same wiring, the same DVR, all of that. Because if you don't have the same recording device, you can still do the work, but I think it diminishes the strength of an opinion that can be formed from the data you collect. And so in this case, I had a couple conversations with Mr. Lynch, one I think by phone, asking him those very questions. Have you done anything to your recorder? No, I haven't done anything, he responded. I said, good, and I was seeking his consent to be able to do these experiments because we would have to gain access to his home and access to his digital video recording system in the home, as well as be in the backyard again of the Halderson residence after dark. And he said he would allow us to do that work. And so I talked to Deputy Wilk. I spoke to my supervisor, Lieutenant Carls, and said this is what I think we should do here, is to try to get a greater understanding of where that light was coming from. I received the go-ahead from the administration at the Sheriff's Department to do this work. So on July 30th, it was a Friday evening, I met in front of the Halderson residence with Deputy Wilk and with Lieutenant Carls. I briefed them again on what I wanted them to do. And what I had done was I took a 48-inch piece of angle iron steel and I connected magnetic LED lights to it. So we had approximately 3 feet of vertical light. And then the bottom foot of that stick, kind of like a lightsaber, you could hold on to without having lights beneath your hands. What I told Deputy Wilk was I said, we're going to be in cell phone contact. I'm going to be over at the Lynch residence across the pond. You, Deputy Wilk, are going to be in the Halderson backyard. I said, I'm going to give you direction where I want you to stand, and when I give you the command, what I'd like you to do is take that lightsaber, that stick, and just move it slowly in front of the window of where you're standing. I don't want you to wave it wide. I don't want you to hold it up high or low. I want you to be in front of, from the camera's perspective, where the frame of the windows would be.
I want a lightsaber.
And I said, I'll tell you when to stop, and I'll tell you when to move to the next window. So I gave him kind of an idea of what we're going to do, so once we did it, it would go quickly and efficiently.
Was not
so
on my bingo card.
What we needed to do.
Got it. So to recreate the experiment, you essentially had another deputy who you were on the phone with, who stood in front of the windows, moving a light around as you filmed him, presumably with the same camera from Mr. Lynch.
Yes.
Okay. But you discovered an offset, correct, in your work over at Mr. Lynch's house?
Yes, I did. So we conducted these experiments, collected the data from the DVR, and I went back to the laboratory at the sheriff's office and started examining the data. And to try to say, well, we want apples to apples comparison, we have to make sure that that's the case. Mr. Lynch told me that he had not done anything to his DVR system, but he did say to me, he said he had been doing some reconstruction work on the deck, I think replacing some deck boards or something. He said they've been doing a lot of hammering, sawing, pounding. He said there's a possibility that the camera might have moved, but he said he had not done anything to move that camera or to alter it in any way. When I was in the laboratory trying to register the images from July 2nd with the images we collected from July 30th, the Y direction, the vertical, was dead on. It was in exactly the same tilted position, up and down. The X position, however, the left and right, was off. And I saw what you see here as a sample, as an example, that the pillar was offset. When I measured how
Does
far
anybody
it was
feel
offset,
badly for the court reporter?
And so that had to be
Yikes.
factored into the calculations of the XY coordinates of every window that we were going to measure, that, okay, these camera is essentially in the same location, however, it had moved by the equivalent of 7 pixels on the recording.
Okay. In many ways, you're lucky that this pillar was here and that it was an immediate, obvious error that needed to be corrected in the camera.
That's correct.
Okay. And so you say when you performed this work, you had to adjust 7 pixels to the left, and that brought you back into the original state of the Lynch video on the night of July 2nd.
Yes.
Okay. In performing this work, you did something called frame averaging. Quickly, if you could tell us what that is.
Yes, so frame averaging is what's called a noise reduction process. Whenever you record video, audio, or still images, you get what's called a signal to noise ratio. Signal is the stuff you want. Noise is the stuff you don't want. So in this case, the signal are the things in the scene we want to record. The noise is generated by the image sensor in the camera, the circuitry in the camera, Noise can be generated by the compression process in the digital video recorder. Cumulatively, all these things become visual problems for us to try to see clearly. What frame averaging does
I will
for
say
us
this.
is instead of just stopping the video
He
on one
explains
frame
this
and
much
taking a
better
look
than
and making an assessment,
95% of
what we do
everybody
is
else.
we take subsequent frames and we mathematically average them together. So the idea is in any sampling, if I just take one sample of a population, I can make an assessment, but that assessment may or may not be right. The reality is we would have to take more samples to know if our result is reflective of the population. If I were to look at one image and say, ooh, there's a flickering window, I might be right, but the reality is I don't know. So I want to sample multiple images, and in this case I sampled over 90,000 images to make sure that we consistently saw a flickering light in the same position throughout that duration of time. What frame averaging does is it allows us to see mathematically what happened in that area during that time, because images are just numbers. So those RGB values for each pixel, if we were to average those together over time, that allows us to see what's normally there. Visually, what that does for me is it allows me to more clearly see the edges of that bright window in that dark environment.
So using frame averaging, you were able to determine what the XY coordinates of the flickering window were.
I did.
And if we're zoomed in now, obviously really close, I think everyone can see the timestamp, but that white thing on the right, that's the pole that we've been looking at the whole time, but now we're zoomed in, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So at that point, you know the coordinates of this window that was flickering, and you're out there doing this experiment, you have this guy over there, this other deputy waving the light stick around, and you're going to frame average those images as well to come up with the experiment image, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so then you're going to start comparing and contrasting. So let's start with the dining room window, the first one. So we're going to move left to right, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so dining room window on the far left. What are we looking at there? And we'll go through this one with some detail, and then we'll move a little quicker because some of these are going to be quite similar. But what are we looking at there?
Sure. So what I've got here on slide number 30 is a frame averaged image on the left of the flickering window, the questioned image from the night of July 2nd. Its companion to the right is Deputy Wilk in a frame averaged set of images standing in front of the dining room window to try to show the two locations of the flickering window, which is the questioned window, versus the known window, which was dining room window number 1.
Right. On the right image, this is your experiment, and you look to have essentially duct taped an iPad to that pole at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's a clock on there?
Yeah, because I didn't really know what all testing we were going to need to do, and so I took an iPad and just strapped it to the pole to make sure it was in the image, ran a stopwatch so I had a time reference that was reliable if we needed to do any timing information in the future.
Right. The time's not going to be relevant for us today, though?
No.
Okay. But if anyone's ever confused the image with the clock on it, or that you have on that pole.
Look at all this work we did to
That's
prove
correct.
that
The
it
other one is
flickered.
the actual raw footage from the night of
I
July
guess.
2nd, or the early morning hours
Less
of
to
July
refute.
2nd.
Yes.
Like they could play it, but then they'd be like,
What are we looking at there?
"How do you know?
So in slide
Where's that
31,
from?"
these are the same images.
You can't
just
tell me that
enlarged
that's what it is.
slightly and cropped
I guess.
to help better focus on the area of interest, which is the two windows, the question window on the left from the night of July 2nd, or the morning of July 2nd rather, and then on the right from our first test in front of the dining room window.
Right. So you determine then the XY coordinates of the flickering window. We already have
I was
those.
just about to say
And
that.
then the XY coordinates of
I mean,
your
other
sample
than
dining room window.
that, I guess there's
Correct.
no proof than a
And you
smell
made
from a
those
neighbor.
on a graph.
But
Yeah, I made in slide 34 a graphic representation to help better visually show the actual locations in two-dimensional space. So video is just a two-dimensional representation of that scene. So in 2 dimensions, if we were to go to the next slide, the red box on the left is the location of the dining room light where Deputy Wilkes stood, waved his light. I frame averaged through to try to see on average where the light fell. And on the right is the location of the flickering window.
And you reached a conclusion.
Right, so in the first experiment, the conclusion was that the flickering light on July 2nd was not coming from the dining room light, or the dining room window, rather.
Okay. So we'll keep walking across the back side of the Halderson house. Now we're on to kitchen window 2.
no.
You performed the same experiment with Deputy Wilk, moving the light around that night?
That's correct.
And again, we have our coordinates that are known of the flickering window, the coordinates that you obtained from your experiment, and you laid those on a graph, correct?
I did. So in slide 43, again, a representation of where those windows
It's a
were.
fire. They're burning
And
something. Or someone.
Image, or the red block on the left,
Just saying.
represents the location
Probably
of
not.
that
But you should
kitchen
get this
window.
guy on it.
And the red block on the right is the location of the flickering light from the morning of July 2nd.
And you reached a conclusion there?
I did. So like the first experiment, the second experiment was that the conclusion was that the flickering light was not coming from the kitchen window on July 2nd.
We'll keep going. Kitchen door. Now we're in the third light in from the left at the kitchen door. We have our images there, same as before, of the original image, sample image from the test, the coordinates we've been looking at, and the coordinates you were able to obtain from your experiments. You laid those on a graph as well.
Yeah, so in slides 52 and 53, I'm showing in red the locations of where those lights were. The image, the red area on the left is actually the kitchen door light location in 2 dimensions. And on the right, the flickering light location from the early morning hours of July 2nd.
And you reached a conclusion there?
I did. The flickering light was not coming on July 2nd from the kitchen door.
All right. Now on to the fireplace window, the fourth window in. Here on the left, the original frame average of the original image from the Lynch house in the early morning hours of the second. On the right, your experiment with Deputy Wilk moving that light around, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There are the coordinates that you were able to obtain from the original Lynch video. And on the right, are those the coordinates that you were able to obtain from frame averaging your experiment?
They are.
Okay. And you laid those on a graph?
I did. So in slides 61 and 62 of this presentation, it's hard to show things that are on top of one another. So what I showed in red here was the location of the flickering window from July 2nd. And on top of it, with green dots, I showed the corners of where our light test showed the location of Deputy Wilk standing.
Is that perhaps a more zoomed in version of what you were trying to show there?
That's correct.
Okay. You reached a conclusion there?
Yes, so in slide 64, the conclusion was clear to me that the flickering light from July 2nd was coming from the fireplace window, the window closest to the fireplace.
Okay. And then we'll just talk quickly.
No, not at all.
The remainder, of
Not
course.
at all annoying.
You went through all of the windows on the rear side on that first level, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We're now talking about the family room door, same process, the original image, the image from the test. You laid the coordinates from each one, put them on a graph, and reached a conclusion that's regarding the family room door. And what was that conclusion?
I did. In slide 73, the flickering light on July 2nd was not coming from the family room, or from the family room door.
Excellent. And then just briefly to TV room 6, and now we're the sixth window.
Thank
from the
you.
left. Same process, the original image, the sample image, the coordinates of the pixels. You laid it on a graph and reached a conclusion there. What is that conclusion?
Yes, in slide 82, the flickering light on July 2nd was not coming from the TV window.
Okay. Now we're looking at, lastly, on this image, or this PowerPoint, the garage north window. That's that farthest window to the right, correct?
Correct.
Right. Same process. You had your original image, you had your experiment, and you reached a conclusion there.
Yes, so on slide 86, the conclusion on that experiment was that the flickering light on July 2nd was not coming from the garage north window.
Just briefly tell us about this slide and why you included it.
So in slide 87, this is image 80,389 from the crime scene video that I recorded throughout the scene. And it shows the window from the inside closest to the fireplace. This is what I've been referring to in the experiments as fireplace window number 4.
Okay. And it is your conclusion that it was this window that was the source of the flickering light in the early morning hours of July 2nd?
Yes.
Hello.
calculate some uncertainty here, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So whenever we're doing experiments with data, it's important to try to identify any uncertainties, things that we can know. Some people call them error rates. I don't know if that terminology is exactly appropriate in this discipline. Uncertainties are the terminology that I received in my training from the folks at the FBI in doing reverse projection. There's certain certainties that we can calculate, and there's certain things we cannot calculate because we'll never know. In this case, there was an uncertainty that could be calculated, and that's called resolution uncertainty. So on slide 88 here, I listed it's the smallest possible measure that can be deduced from a two-dimensional recording. And that's affected by the camera, lens, recording, all the factors that I mentioned earlier. So we want to say what, in terms of granularity, what's the smallest thing we could see from this recording?
Okay, and you included a photograph there.
Yes, so in slide 89, I've annotated the dimensions of the windows that I took with a Stanley tape measure when I was in the Halderson's backyard to have an idea of what is the actual measurement of those windows versus the perceived measurement in terms of pixels on the recording.
And you calculated some uncertainty there.
Yes, so here I've put side by side the same window, fireplace window 4. On the left, the height was 49 inches tall. On video, on the right, it was 4 pixels tall. And likewise, the horizontal measurement on the left, 72 inches wide was that window. On video, it was 6 pixels wide. So if we do the mathematics on it, on the next slide here, it'll show if we divide 72 inches wide by 6 pixels wide, we end up with 12 inches per pixel horizontally. So every time we saw one of those little squares in video, it represented a measurement of approximately 12 inches. So we wouldn't see a little tiny detail like you would if you took a selfie or you had a camera up close. 12 inches horizontal, and vertically, mathematically, it came out to 12 1/4 inches. So anything smaller than that, we just can't tell from that distance.
Okay. So after calculating the uncertainty and looking into all the variables and all of your work, based on your training and experience, is it your testimony that, in fact, fireplace window 4 was the source of the light in the early morning hours of July 2nd?
Yes, it is.
All right. You might want to take a drink of water. I'm just going to ask to approach the judge here for 1 second.
Yeah, we're going to be having a math quiz at the end of this, and so...
Been here an hour. If you're okay for the next 40 minutes, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. If anybody needs the break now, we'll take it. Does anybody need to break now, or can we go forward? Let's go forward. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hey, you're okay, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
No, I asked you, I guess.
Sorry.
All right.
After essentially concluding in this case that fireplace window 4 was the source of the flickering light, you were actually asked to look at the video itself and do some work on the video to put it in a more presentable fashion of those early morning hours of July 2nd.
Yes.
What did you do?
So there's a lot more video that we had than what we're going to present today. But the main focus in this part of the investigation was that flickering light. So I took the video, enlarged the video, and I was asked to try to speed it up so we didn't have to look at hours of video, is to try to take portions and speed it up in terms of frame rate, so it would go much faster than real time. We still see the effect of the flickering light, and at other portions to let it run at one-time speed so that we could see it in real time, and then just kind of show the duration of that morning, what was seen in that window, fireplace window number 4.
Sure. And just so everyone's on the same page, when you say you enlarge the video, are you confident that you're staying authentic to the video, that you're not altering it in any way?
That's right. And whenever I do enlargements in the laboratory, I do it in multiple fashions so that I can try to see the visual effect of different types of enlargements that can be done.
Okay. I'm showing what's been marked in this case is exhibit number 315. At least from the labels on this, does this appear to be the video presentation that you put together regarding the early morning hours of July 2nd at the Halderson home in that flickering window?
It does.
All right, I'll move 315 into evidence and ask to publish it.
Any objection?
No objection.
It is received. It may be published.
Who snapped into a Snickers?
And while the detective is queuing that up, the video's, I think, 35, 40 minutes long, around there.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
We are not going to watch the whole thing.
I understand the video is silent, but I'll promise you the jury's already had a couple opportunities to watch long, silent videos in this case. But I may chime in at times and pause it to ask you questions about why you chose to speed up or slow down during certain portions. And in fact, when we start playing the video, we'll pause it and I'll just have you explain what the jury's looking at briefly. You take the screen off and put it back on. So you don't have to reset it. We try that one more time.
That they have video of a fire and he burned his parents, or tried overnight, taking it that much further than what he already had done, I suppose. The rear window. Somebody called Jimmy Stewart. What do you want, Mary? Do you want the moon? Just say the word and I'll get it for you. I'll just get a lasso. I'm sure you already knew that answer, and I'm sure that I just mansplained it. And I'm sorry. For the benefit of everybody, though. I think they're going to take a break. That's what I think. They're going to have a problem and take a break. All right. All right. What? We're going back to this? Okay. All right. Here we go.
So as I said before, we're going to now begin playing.
Are we?
It's 35, a little over 35 minutes long. And again, just putting everyone in the right mindset, we're talking about the early morning hours of July 2nd. And in fact, there'll be a timestamp on this, correct?
That is correct.
All right, we'll begin playing. And as it's playing, what is the number in the bottom left corner that's moving rapidly?
So in the lower left corner, I added
I love Jimmy
frame
Stewart.
numbers. So each frame has an individual number.
And his voice.
And there you've labeled the windows?
That is correct.
And obviously, we've talked before, but you've identified the flickering light as being that number 4, fireplace window?
That is correct.
And there, you've overlaid those labels onto the zoomed-in part of the screen?
That is correct.
And we have the time there in the very center of the screen. Right now, about 12:19 in the morning?
That's correct.
If we look at the far left, there's a smaller image. Is that the whole image before you zoomed in?
Yes, so the image on the left is the actual size of the video that we received without modifications in size.
And just switch from 9x to 1x. What does that mean?
So I was asked by Detective Sims in preparation for trial to take portions of the
without grammar
light throughout the evening.
No, not really.
And
But I gotta have more cowbell.
Just in the
I could
interest
do
of the court's time,
some sound
and then other
effects.
sections just to run it at
Needs more
normal speed,
cowbell.
1x. So those annotations were added by me.
All right. Is anybody be sad that we fast forward through this? It's flickering. It's still flickering.
Say that just before the 3 a.m. mark, the fireplace window appeared to go dark for a second there.
It did.
This does need more cowbell, this video. It's still flickering. It's still flickering. Oh, the light's coming up. Hold on. It's about to get fun. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Fatboy Slim, that video that he was in, was awesome. It really flickered. With the best of them. I used to could tap dance. It's been a while. Now I feel like my entire life is a tap dance. Light goes up, goes on.
To watch. Fair to say that in your profession, watching long pieces of video where nothing's going on is just part of what you do.
It all has to be searched, yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you speeding it up so we didn't have to watch the 4 or 5 hours there.
Thank you.
Just a couple last questions. Based on your analysis when we went through the PowerPoint, the reverse projection, your view of the camera system, and all of your expert analysis in this case, are you confident that that window that we saw at around 3 in the morning that was very, very bright and then just in a snap went dark, are you confident that that is the fireplace window 4?
Yes, I am.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you.
May this witness be excused?
He may be excused.
And released?
I'll make a decision on that.
Maybe.
Thank you, Deputy. You're
But
excused
probably
from
not.
The remainder of today, and I don't think there are any exhibits in front of you.
No.
Have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
If you believe you can safely and responsibly testify without wearing a mask, that would be our preference at this time.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go right ahead.
Good morning. Please state and spell your name.
It's William Boswell, William. Last name is Boswell, B-O-S as in Sam, W-E-L-L.
And what do you do?
He was made fun of.
I'm a special agent with the State of Wisconsin Department of Justice.
Any particular area of expertise?
Yes, within the Division of Criminal Investigation, I'm assigned to the Arson Bureau.
What are your roles as a special agent with the Arson Bureau?
With the Arson Bureau, we specifically generally investigate fires and explosions believed to be of an intentional nature, an incendiary intentional act.
Showing it to be marked in this case is exhibit number 314. Just finish that.
That is a copy of my curricula vitae.
Move 314 into evidence.
Are we going to go through the CV again?
Early in your career, how'd you get started in being interested in fire or anything of that sort?
Kind of a longer story, but many, many years ago was a volunteer firefighter.
Sounds like you didn't do a great job then.
As a college student in biology and secondary education.
Oh, that was inappropriate.
And then, became enrolled at Oklahoma State University's School of Fire Protection. Was hired as a fire protection consultant with Wausau Insurance Companies in 1994, and then with the Department of Justice in January of 2000 as a special agent.
And I see a badge there. Are you a law enforcement officer?
I am, sir.
And tell me a little bit about your training or your education in the area of investigating fires or arson.
Certainly. So initially it was with the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Academy, did my 420 or so hours there, and then took various courses prior to that while I was employed with Wausau Insurance and while I was in college in fire investigation with the International Association of Arson Investigators, the Oklahoma chapter of the International Association of Arson Investigators, and then here in Wisconsin. In addition to that, I've taken fire academy courses in fire investigation, various courses in fire death investigation, and I currently teach for the Wisconsin Department of Justice Death Investigation School. I teach fire death investigation and body recovery.
Tell us about the subspecialty of fire death investigations.
So with fire death investigation, my background there is assessing fire scenes. We generally look at fire patterns on walls and on floors and ceilings and things of that nature. When we specifically are dealing with a fire death related event, we're looking for those same types of patterns and making various assessments about things that we see with bodies. Sometimes it's a complete intact body. Sometimes it's a body that's been disarticulated as a result of the fire or fire suppression operations.
What effect does fire have on the human body?
It can change it dramatically. Heat, when heat is applied to a body, heat will generally cause the skin to tighten and shrink. Wrinkles around the corners of the eyes and the corner of the mouth begin to smooth out somewhat with just the application of heat. But as the body continues to heat within a compartment or a bedroom or wherever it might be, those changes eventually will get down to the destruction of the skin, the fat, the muscle tissue, and can ultimately, if the fire is allowed to continue to burn, down to the destruction of the bone tissue as well.
Sure. You talked a little bit about your experience, your education, and maybe your teaching. As well as teaching, are you one of the people who actually responds to crime scenes?
Yes, sir.
What type of crime scenes are you responding to regularly?
They vary. In addition to the fire-related events that I get called to as an employee of the Department of Justice, my coworkers in the Arson Bureau generally get called out to work officer-involved shootings, homicides that our special assignments folks investigate, and we assist in processing those scenes, sometimes with and sometimes without the assistance of the State Crime Laboratory.
Do you have any estimate as to how many fire scenes you've investigated as in your role in the Department of Justice?
Since January of 2000, if I estimated about 25 per year, over 400 or more as a case agent, and additional as an assisting agent with one of the other folks in the Arson Bureau.
And as part of that experience, if you unfortunately had to see the human body in various states of being burned on different occasions?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes partially and sometimes more completely.
That's correct.
Talk to us generally about fire. What temperature does fire generally burn at? What can you tell us about fire?
Most any fire that you experience generally does not burn beyond about the temperature of around 1,800 degrees.
Sure. Is 1,800 degrees what generally fire burns at? Is that sufficient to incinerate completely the human body into ash?
It generally would not.
Tell me about that.
Generally, you end up needing some additional, if I can use the word assistance, to result in the destruction of human tissue. Even devices that are designed in crematoriums to completely destroy a body often will leave various small fragments of bone, not very often tissue, but small fragments of bone that are left over after that cremation event. So short of adding additional oxygen or maybe changing the fuel to oxygen ratio and how the fire burns, it's very, very difficult to get a complete consumption.
This man is, as the kids say,
just from
sus.
the fire.
When you say insert oxygen, would a small household fan, I suppose there's one sitting right there, something of that size be enough to do what you just mentioned in terms of inserting oxygen if that were applied to a perhaps just a residential fire?
It would certainly help. I mean, if by example, if you're lighting a small campfire or something of that nature, or lighting a fire in your own fireplace, you may often, blow on that or or you use a set of bellows or maybe wave your hand to add and move additional air or oxygen across the surface of that fire to increase the effectiveness of that fire.
Sure. In crime scenes you've responded to and in your training and experience where the human body has been burned, are there usually some remains left that you're able to identify or find?
Generally, yes.
And in perhaps the more extreme of those states, what are those remains? What's usually left?
You'll find very small pieces of bone fragment, the more thick or dense pieces of the human skeleton, perhaps kneecaps, the ball joints of hips and shoulders, where the bone is more densely compacted because of just its development. Teeth will oftentimes remain, thicker portions, maybe around the orbits of the eye, maybe portions of the base of the skull.
Are you assisted in your work with the Department of Justice with professionals in other disciplines?
Yes, sir.
And just in general, what professions do you generally work with?
We work with medical examiners, forensic pathologists, and forensic anthropologists on a fairly regular basis when we're dealing with burned and scattered or disarticulated human remains.
In the early part of July, or going into mid-July of 2021, were you asked to assist in the investigation of the homicides of Bart and Krista Halderson out in Windsor?
Yes, I was.
And how did your involvement come to be in that investigation?
Dane County Deputy Greg Leatherberry had contacted another one of my co-workers with the U.S. Department of Justice, Special Agent William Fulton, to assist in coming to look at the residence in Windsor, and specifically at that time it was directed toward looking at a fireplace that was inside the residence. After they had assessed it, I was on vacation back in Pennsylvania at the time. I was contacted and asked if upon my return to Wisconsin if I could stop by and also take a look at and assess the fireplace inside the residence.
And did you stop by?
I did, sir.
And did you have an opportunity to thoroughly examine the fireplace, the logs, the newspaper, the ashes, and things of that sort at that fireplace at the Halderson home?
Yes, sir.
All right. And were you aware that photographs were being taken throughout these processes of examining the fireplace and searching the home?
Yes, I was.
I'm showing it's been marked in this case as exhibit number 316 all the way through 340. Can you just page through those? And the question at the end is, do these appear to be photographs of the Halderson fireplace home in areas that were searched by you and others in law enforcement over the course of days you were there?
Oh no! You better be careful, because that cat's gonna start banning people. So just, well, you're not on your mod account, so you're fine. You're good. You're safe.
Oh, yes, photographs of such?
Yes, those are.
Okay, I'll take those back from you. I'll move 316 all the way through 340 into evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are received. They may be published.
And Special Agent, there's a screen in front of you that's going to come on, but Judge, I'll ask to publish those via slideshow, USB, or the HDMI left.
I appreciate that this man takes his water and pours it away from the microphone. Just saying.
And Agent, what are we looking at there in Exhibit 228?
This is the fireplace that I was asked to come and examine.
Just based on this overall photograph, if any observations you're able to make based on your training and experience in this area?
In looking at the fireplace insert or the wrap that's around the fireplace, there is an area at the top that is a different color. It appears as if the paint is missing in that area, and that's perhaps bare metal beneath. And it appears as if of the what should be 4 glass inserts in the fireplace, only 3 remain.
We'll go to the next photograph. What are we looking at there?
This appears to be the base of the fireplace, or the hearth area, with the fireplace insert and the base of the fireplace at the top of the photograph. There are also what appear to be 3 evidence markers placed on the hearth as well.
Around the time that you were there and at other times you were where Deputy Leatherberry was taking swabs and things of that sort around the fireplace?
That's correct.
Right, we'll go to the next slide. What are we looking at there?
That appears to be a pair of gloves.
All right, and that's Exhibit 229.
But did they fit? So we don't have to acquit.
I'll say it's Exhibit 229.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
We'll go to the next one.
Okay.
Tell us about that view.
That again is the front or the facing side of the fireplace, with the 3 of 4 panels of glass still in place. It appears in this photograph you can still see portions of the glass at both the top and the bottom of the door frame on the left-hand side.
Go to the next slide, 231. Is that a closer-up view of that area that you were saying you could see the bare metal?
That is correct.
What does this appear to be to you based on your training and experience? What were you observing there?
A picture.
In looking at this photograph, there are a couple of things. One, if we look toward the middle portion of the photograph on the stone, there is some soot deposition or discoloration to the stone, which would not be uncommon in the area of a wood-burning fireplace inside a home. Beneath that is the insert for the fireplace, and toward the, if you were looking at the top edge, toward the left and the right-hand side, there appears to be a bubbling or some type of change in the texture of the paint on both sides, and in the middle portion, the paint appears to be absent down to the level of the bare metal.
Okay, we'll go to the next one. 232, what did 232 appear to be to you?
232 appears to be the far right-hand pane of the glass doors to the fireplace.
We'll go to the next one. 233, is it closer up of that glass area that you said was broken off?
That's correct, down toward the bottom left door, yes.
We'll go to the next slide, which is 234. And is that door open?
That's correct.
We'll go to the next slide. 235. At some point, you opened up the fireplace, correct?
That's correct.
What types of observations did you personally make based on your training experience once you were able to open up the fireplace and look inside?
Certainly. Just a couple of items in looking around. If we've moved beyond the observations of the fireplace insert with the discoloration and the change in texture of the paint, as we look inside the fireplace, there are a few areas of discoloration on both the left, rear, and right-hand sides of the stonework inside the fireplace. There is a discoloration or a change in coloration, if you will, on the fireplace grate from left to right. And as we got in a little bit further and began to examine things a little more closely, there was almost like a greasy residue on the pull chain on the right-hand side, which controls the fireplace damper at the top of the chimney.
In your profession, why was discoloration noticeable, or why did you even note it in any of your reports?
Certainly, there is when we look at fire scenes in general, we're looking for changes in things from in patterns. If we're looking at the overall a particular piece of fuel, let's say, like a couch, we're looking at differences across the surfaces of that couch. Considering it's the same piece of fuel from left to right, top to bottom, we're looking at how it burns differently and what it may do differently in the environment. In looking at this photograph of the fireplace grate in particular, we noticed the color change.
That's not me, by the way.
Between left and right. To me, that indicated that something on toward the right-hand side of the fireplace burned differently, was perhaps a different fuel than what was on the opposing side.
All right, we'll go to the next slide. 236, just a view of that glass again.
That's correct.
All right, next slide, 237. What are we looking at there, and why was that notable?
At the bottom of the fireplace, or the fireplace floor, and what you would find in most solid fuel burning fireplaces or furnaces, you would find a trap door, if you will, or an ash dump door. It's a flat metal door that rotates on a central pin left or right, and in a fireplace that burns wood, to get rid of the ash, you would, to keep your fireplace clean, you would open that up, sweep the ash down in, and it would go into some type of container or area where the ash would be secured until you cleaned it out.
Sure. Is this a common feature in homes?
Yes. In wood-burning fireplaces, yes.
Okay. And the area in which this goes into, is that generally a fire-resistant area?
Generally, it could go into an ash bucket. I can tell you from personal experience growing up, it went to another unused fireplace in the basement of my parents' home. And it just went to the floor in the basement, and there was nothing there to catch it. In some locations, it's an enclosed environment. In other locations, it might go into a metal ash bin or bucket where the ash would be collected and removed.
In the times that it's an enclosed environment and not just a bucket or another fireplace below it, is there usually an access door to allow the homeowner or whoever's keeping the fire to be able to clean that out periodically?
Yes, there should be.
We'll go to the next slide. 238. What are we looking at there, and why was that notable?
This is the right side, lower right-hand side of the fireplace, and again, I believe when Detective Leatherberry took this photograph, it was to document that discoloration of the tines, if you will, on the fireplace grate, as well as the presence of the greasier substance that's on the handle for the pool chain on the right-hand side.
Sure. This may be a good time to ask this question. Some of these photographs are being taken by others, but were you personally involved in being very close to this area and this fireplace?
Yes, I was.
Was there any sort of scent that made that gave you any impression or that raised your attention at all?
Yes, there was.
And tell me about that.
When I'll talk about by example first, because it'll be somewhat maybe gruesome toward the end. When in the performance of my normal duties, if we are out conducting a fire death investigation and we're looking to recover human remains inside a structure that may be buried beneath debris, that may be in collapse, whatever it might be, we rely very much on our senses sometimes to get us there. Sometimes it's a sense of sight. Sometimes it is feel. You can sometimes walk over top of human remains that are beneath ash and not know it until you feel a difference in what you're standing on. And sometimes it is smell. And I equate that smell very often because I love to barbecue. It smells like barbecued pork oftentimes, or the grease that you would get from barbecuing a pork shoulder. And this is the smell that I associated with what I was gathering from inside the fireplace when I was down in front of it and working near it.
We'll go to the next slide.
Nope.
Now we're back up on the actual frame itself, but I think it's a closer view in Exhibit 241. Can you tell us why this photograph's relevant and what you're able to glean from that bubbling that we see there?
Certainly. This appears to me to be, if we look at the doors and the break in the seam of the doors, this is probably where the two doors come together in the middle of the fireplace, and what you're seeing on the metallic surface above of the insert is a bubbling or a change in the texture of the paint that is applied, presumably from the manufacturer, but the paint that's applied around the frame of the fireplace.
And based on your training and experience, do you have any comment as to what might cause such bubbling?
Certainly. Around the fireplace, the assessment that I think most people would make if they looked at it was that it must have been impacted thermally by some type of heat leaving the fireplace and impacting the metal. Could that also be caused by some type of chemical contact? Absolutely.
We'll go to the next slide. 242. Now, this is the other side of perhaps that area on the top of the frame. What different are you able to glean from this picture? It's labeled as 242, but also with Mr. Leatherberry's sticker as Family L.
Certainly. As we are on the left side of the photo, the far left side of the photo where the two corners of the insert come together, there is no, at least in this photograph, no visible damage or changes in the surface of the paint around the insert. But as we move to the right, you're right also, we start to see that the texture of the paint changes and the amount of the paint present continues to change until we're at the far right-hand side of the photograph where we're down to the bare metallic surface of the frame insert.
Okay. And same question here. Do you believe this either could have been affected by heat or some sort of chemical agent?
I would believe that this would be a heat or a thermal-related artifact.
Sure. Now we'll go to the next slide, which is Exhibit 316. At some point, that fireplace grate was removed out.
That's correct.
And you examined it thoroughly, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay. Is this that grate?
That is the grate.
That newspaper that we see crumpled up in there, was it important to you to maybe look into the date on that newspaper and what type of newspaper it was?
Yes, we did. We examined each of the pieces of each of the items that were on the grate as we went from top to bottom and got down to where the newspaper was.
And you wrote a report in this matter documenting the type of newspaper, where it was addressed to, and the date and all of that?
That's correct.
And if you need to see that report, you let me know and I'll just bring it to you. But do you recall the date that newspaper was from?
I want to well, I don't want to speculate, but late June of 2021, maybe the 23rd, maybe the 27th.
Sure, and if I showed you your report, you'd be able to confirm that?
Absolutely, I would.
All right. Showing your report in this matter, and my thumb is right next to it. Were you right on the 23rd?
I was right on the 23rd.
All right, and what was that addressed to?
It was listed as current resident 4595 Oak Spring Circle, DeForest, Wisconsin, 53532-1743.
And what newspaper was it?
This was the Badgerland Values Dane Zone newspaper.
All right, Badgerland Values Dane Zone paper. That is quite the name. And that is where we're going to stop tonight. Oh my goodness, Night Court is adjourned, everybody. Fascinating. Thank you all so much for hanging in with me. Another Midday Missing is going to be on Wednesday. Hey Ho shows on Friday. I am working on some mini-series, some short clips, short videos. I will be re-recording the short description video for this case. I had recorded it last week, and half of the recording did not record the audio, so oh well. I'm gonna have to redo it, and that's okay. But look forward to, hit the subscribe, hit the alarm bell button. We're gonna be doing a mini series on women on death row, and also looking at possibly including a weekly stupid news video that would get posted. Wouldn't be live, but would be posted, so that we can kind of focus a little more on the trials here and still get our stupid, ridiculous insanity of news that happens weekly around the world. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Share us, that's the best thing that you can do. Retweet when it comes out, share it on Facebook, etc. Word of mouth is everything. Everything. So take care of yourself, your friends, your family, and your community. Don't let anybody dull your sparkle, and shine on, you crazy diamonds. Shine on. I will see you all very soon.